Hey everybody, welcome back to the final episode of this modeling of the wheel. I've been creating a series of videos exploring how to make game-ready 3D assets. This wheel is getting wrapped up today, including removing any of the unwanted geometry. Optimizations are still important, and since this is wrapping up today, hit me up in the comments for any other objects that you've been curious on how to model. We're very nearly there, and maybe I'll go into detail on adding some decals and setting up UVs and materials in another installment, if there's any interest in that. Everybody, when last we left off, we were just cleaning up the extraneous vertices in here that were preventing us from inserting some edge loops. Just going to throw those loops in now. Now, if you do see anywhere where the loop is broken, then that means that there's a vertex somewhere in there that needs to be welded. So I'm just going to select all the verts that are in that section. You can see up top the number of vertices, and then it goes down as soon as I do that. And now we can put a loop in. So if you ever, oh, we've got our snapping turned on. If you ever have a loop that won't go, it's usually just because there's an extraneous vertice somewhere. And you can see the area where there's new loops holds its shape, and the area where there's no loops is quite soft and kind of squishy. So now I'm just going to insert these loops all the way around. And this is just going to help hold the form better when we subdivide. There we go. This is a much nicer looking finished piece. You got a bit of depth there to it. Always take a moment to rotate around your model in 3D. A lot of people, when they're sculpting specifically, will just like be looking at a dead plan view, front view of an object, and they'll be sculpting, and then an hour goes by and they finally rotate the model, only to discover that it's horrendously ugly because they didn't check it. Alright, now, just like before, I'm just selecting all these faces. I should have just used a quicker method to do this, but sometimes when you're just in it, you just go. Just those couple of faces there. Okay. What I'm doing here is I'm actually just thickening this up because I felt like it was still not chonkers enough. Needed to have a bit more depth. So grab that central loop. It's okay. So now I'm getting a properly chunky, beefy back section, which will hold the wheel way more firmly. Looking at the reference image in the background, you can see that that one's also thicker. Okay, and now I'm just subdividing the outer hoop. Getting pretty close to happy with the basic model itself. Again, remember, rotate around, take a look, make sure you're happy with it from all angles. See what's going on here. Well, pretty pleased with it. Now it's at this point where you want to make sure that you've either saved off a copy or a backup or an increment, because we're going to start applying our modifiers, turning this stuff into real mesh. So now I'm going to apply our modifiers and turn them into mesh, which is going to make a fairly heavy amount of geometry for just being a simple wheel. But cleaning it up is going to be pretty easy. Okay, now I'm just going to throw a material on here because I want to see what it looks like. So I've got this like nearly jet black gloss finish material. Bring it up a little bit so it's easier to see. If you're working with like black, it can be quite tricky to see your surfaces. Just gonna put this up onto the grid because I don't like having things clipping. I'm going to bring in a plane. Having a floor for something to sit on helps quite a bit, especially when you start exploring it. You start throwing lights at it so that you can see what the forms look like. So I'll throw in a area light. A bit bigger. Crank up the power of the area light. And area lights are fantastic for that sort of like advertising, car photo shoot lighting, because it kind of emulates the big softbox lighting that they use in professional advertising. Take this lovely plane and turn it into something a little bit more interesting. I'm going to select the back edges and hit E and extrude them upward. Select the corners and bevel them. And again, this is just from like car studio shoots. Soften those or smooth the edges. So those rounded corners in the background prevent there from being any harsh sort of shadows. It just softens the transition between the wall and the floor. And I'm going to tint this just a little bit blue. And I'm going to bring in another light. I'm going to bring in a spot. And a spotlight most closely resembles like a flashlight. Crank up its power, and if the main light was blue, I'm going to make this one an orangey tone. And I'm going to soften that cone so it's not quite as harsh of an edge on the light. A little bit of the orangey sort of sun tone coming in off the top. And then we've got a little bit of the very light blue, almost like sky tone coming off of just above it. And so now I can play with the material and color, darken it up a little bit. Now, if you want to get a little crafty, what we can do is we can actually turn this into a turntable. So we want to play back at 30 frames a second, and 120 frames would be 4 seconds. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the rotational value, hit keyframe. I'm going to go all the way to our 120 frames at the end. Do 359 degrees as opposed to 360 because it's going to loop back around. Now, by default, it kind of accelerates at the beginning and decelerates at the end. I'm going to remove that by going into our curve editor, selecting our curve, going to key, interpolation mode, and we'll change that to linear. So linear takes out that acceleration and deceleration so that now our turntable doesn't accelerate or decelerate, and it just perfectly loops over and over and over again. So this is perfect if you're trying to render out a quick turntable, if you want to show off the asset, and that's applicable to anything, not just this asset. Okay. So I've made sure to select Shade Smooth, turn on the Auto Smooth, and everything is looking pretty clean. I'll also generally throw on a weighted normal towards the end. This is just to clean up anything that might be lingering. There might be some weird normals, but that's okay. All right, we're pretty happy with the product, but it is pretty heavy for what we're looking at here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to select edge loops that I don't think are affecting the shape of the object, and I'll dissolve those. And as I go, as I start to dissolve things, we're going to greatly drop our poly count. They're set. So you can see we were at like 57, we're down to like 51. And there are areas where it's quick and easy to get these, and then there are areas where it's hard and dirty. I only remove the stuff that's quick and easy. If it's going to take me a lot of effort to kind of peel some of that stuff out, then it's probably just best left where it is. Again, laziness is king when it comes to generating these assets. And so anywhere where there's a lot of curvature and bend, I will leave as many of the edge loops as possible. But if it's something that's not going to be, you know, the user's not going to be up close to it, or they're not going to see it, then we can just tweak and tweak and tweak and tear out polygons. All right, everybody. That just about wraps it up for this series. If you want to see more, if you want me to texture it or apply decals, please let me know. And thanks for watching. Well, everybody, this is it. We have come to the end of our first little set of video tutorials. I think next time I'll probably make one long format video as opposed to breaking it down into bite-sized chunks. I think that a 5-minute format might work for specific tips and tricks, but for something like this, a one-off, one shot could probably be more beneficial. Again, get at me in the comments and let me know if that's what you're looking for. Maybe it's texturing or rigging, could still be modeling, could be animation, VFX, UVing, who knows. Maybe you just want me to look at different add-ons for Blender. I don't know. Please feel free to sound off down below. And if you're enjoying our time together, please remember to hit like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe for more content like this. And if you'd like to see us grow and help us out, then sharing the channel goes a long way. And as always, stay happy, stay safe, and happy gaming, everyone.